Hello everyone again, Lachlan's Double O Rails here. Today I am showing you, not so much a tutorial, but how I went about building this little thing. This is roughly based on a locomotive that was built in my hometown of Ballarat, and it goes by the same name of Ballarat, which I thought was quite cool. I came across this locomotive when the ABC wrote an article about how it turned 150 years old last year, 2020, and then I got more interested in it when Anthony Dawson made a video on it, and then that's where I found out that this was based on the same design as the Dolgoch, or by Fletcher Jennings. So I suppose without further ado, I'll show you how I made it. The Ballarat locomotive was built in 1871 by the Victoria Foundry of Ballarat. The locomotive was built to the Fletcher Jennings design, or to the same design as the Talaclyn Railway's Dolgoch. The Ballarat locomotive was built for the West Australian Timber Company in Busselton, over in Western Australia, and is now where it currently resides. The Thomson friends Bachmann Rheneas would have been the obvious choice to make a model of this locomotive, but because it was largely a metal construction, the only thing that was useful was the chassis. Body shell from Shapeways from the shop TDoc. I start by cutting the cab, coal bunkers and other bits off the model with a saw. Make sure that when you're cutting resin you wear a mask, as resin isn't good for your lungs. I continuously use the chassis to measure where the wheels will go when I cut the splashes, as the real thing didn't have any of these, instead using leaf springs. I cut the back head off the Rheneas running board, as the resin plastic was quite flimsy, and this helped to stabilise it. I use a 9-volt battery to see if the wheels can still spin freely inside the body. I use strips of plasticard to fill in the gaps around the firebox and cab area. I also use some under the running board to strengthen the resin. I use larger pieces to fill in the gaps where the bunkers were, but in hindsight I didn't need to do this, as I will explain later. Using a photo as reference, I measured an 00 scale driver from the bottom of the feet just above the hips. This will be the height of the sides and back of the cab. Starting with the back, I glue down a strip to hold up the backside, which will then hold up the sides. I found a back head piece I casted using milliput and the controls from a Dapol pug kit. Next, I sand down the corners of the walls so that they're curved rather than being square. Now it's time to fill in the gaps with putty. After spraying it with an undercoat of Citadel Paint Chaos Black, it shows the new places that need filling, and now it's rinse and repeat until the gaps are all smoothed out. I use milliput in the places that the putty can't reach, and places that aren't visible. I use a file to smoothen out the front of the buffer beam. Originally I was going to use cardboard from a cereal box where the firebox goes, but it has too many creases, so I opted for thin plastic packaging instead. Now for the fun part, the wooden cladding. I used strips cut to the length of a boiler and glue them on. This actually used quite a bit of plasticard. Using another strip, I give it the boiler banding. I used some leaf springs from another dapple kit. I cut out some triangles as braces on the running board for the boiler. Next, I use some handrails from an old Hornby model on the boiler. I have to continually fill in the holes and drill out more, as it was difficult to use such a small pin vise on the curved surfaces. Now that the construction is complete, it's time for the paint. The brown paint is Vallejo 140 flat brown. The gold for the boiler banding is Humbrol 16. For everything else, I use Citadel paints of Baden Black, and on the running plate I use Wah Flesh. Then I painted the pistons on the chassis. Now we have a completed Ballaarat model. And with that, I'll see you next time. I've got more projects coming, so stay tuned for that. See you later.